Meeting into session. It is October the 26th at 6 o'clock. And welcome. Are there any citizens' concerns? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to understanding whether there are any objections to the minutes.
I have no objections.
I would say present because we already approved it at the last council meeting.
Very good. So those will stand approved.
Well, actually present, maybe 2-0 on present.
It will stand approved. Yes. Correct. And number 3 then on the agenda is the ASR contract.
Oh, thank you. This is something that you have not seen before, because prior to this coming year, this agreement has been under the threshold for city council approval. But some of you may recall, a number of years ago, the city applied for an AFG grant. We had Chief Klein was our fire chief at the time, and we had partners in Northwood, Perrysburg Township, Lake Township, and Rossford. We all kind of pooled our resources together, applied for a grant, and we were awarded an ASR, which is an Astro site repeater. And this device, which is actually a rack full of devices, sits out in Bowling Green at one of the university's towers. It's Oppenheimer, I can always say it wrong, but I got it right, Oppenheimer Tower. And what it does is it actually connects to Lucas County's 700 megahertz system. So the system that police and fire are currently using is actually an extension of Lucas County's system. So that's what their portable and mobile radios are hooked to. So we have an agreement and have had an agreement with Motorola, and what they do is they do preventative maintenance on this system. They provide software updates, security updates. They monitor the system 24/7 to know if there's any technical issues with equipment that might be failing, so that they notify us and we give them permission to replace that equipment. Or if there are alarms going off in the room that could tell us that there's high heat in that room, since it's computer equipment, obviously, you want that to be as cool as possible. They additionally will monitor to see if the system somehow loses connection with Lucas County. And in the event that happens, and knock on wood, that's not happened, I think, to my knowledge. There may have been a hiccup once a couple years ago, but they do all of that for us. So what this agreement is it's a brand new agreement. It's a 5-year agreement. All of our partners agree that we should go down the road of a 5-year agreement versus a 3-year agreement. And they each pay 1/5 of the cost of this. So we are the contract holder. The ASR is City of Perrysburg property. We are the lead entity, but in partnership with our neighbors, we collectively pay for this agreement. But it is over $25,000 now per year, starting in 2022. So we're coming before council asking for permission to enter into this 5-year agreement, knowing that we will be reimbursed for 4/5 of this agreement annually over the life of the contract.
It was $147,000, wasn't it?
It's $148 over the 5 years.
Yeah.
And there is in the document, there's a little.
But that's the full amount. Right?
Full amount, that's for 5 years.
That's the full amount, okay.
The schedule in here, whoops, it might be in the other document. Oh, no, I just passed it.
Oh, we're each paying for 1 year of it. It seems like.
Almost. So the schedule is, first year is like $27,900, then it goes to $28,700, $29,600, $30,500, and $31,422.
Oh,
So it does have a small escalator each year. But by doing a 5-year agreement, we do save about $4,000 over doing a 3-year agreement by locking in. And this, good or bad, puts us in the same cyclical timing with Lucas County's contract with Motorola, which may not be significant today, but Lucas County's getting ready to go through some updates and upgrades on their end. And our updates now will start coinciding with their updates, so we'll always be on the same software platform, which can be significant.
All right, take it, Chief, and everyone's happy with the services we've received so far with them?
We've not had any blackouts or drop calls, I think, since the inception of the program.
We technically own part of the system this way, so we don't pay user fees to Lucas County, so this is.
Yeah, they've graciously waived those, so we're part of a larger network. Not only are we on Lucas County's system, Lucas County also has Fulton County, Henry County on their system. And I know that they were working on others, perhaps. I don't know if it was Ottawa County. So we're part of a larger network.
But this in particular is just Wood County.
Yes, this is just for the 5 jurisdictions. And I won't say Wood County overall, because not all entities of Wood County utilize this system.
It's the northern part is the way I understand it.
Yes, just the very, very northern portion.
And one other question I have is, do we have a warranty in use for this, just in case there would be?
The equipment originally came with warranties. Most of them are out of warranty. We're actually looking at partnering with our partners on replacing a couple pieces over the course of the next 2 years, and that'll bring the warranty back into renewal phase, if you will. But there are a couple antennas that are coming to the end of their useful life that we have budgeted within this fund that all parties will contribute dollars towards, and I think they're like $7,000. But it's outside the scope of this contract. If there's anything else I can answer, I'd be happy to try.
Any other questions?
Or deflect to the chief.
I read the, what they sent me today.
Are you in approval?
Yes, I am. Most certainly.
Then 3-0.
Thank you.
The big item on the agenda, the 2022 budget.
So I'm actually going to turn this over to Chief Jones and Lieutenant Sargent. Not to put you on the spot, Lieutenant Sargent. But obviously, if there's any questions that I can answer, I will certainly chime in, but I think that's a pretty straightforward budget.
So first off, I'll introduce Chris Sargent. Some of you may have met Chris already. Chris comes to us from Ottawa Hills. When Lieutenant Dean Butler retired, we went out looking for a lieutenant. Chris came highly recommended. Been very impressed with Chris, so kind of getting Chris to learn the ropes here. So someday, he can take on some more responsibilities.
His last name again, please? Chris?
Sargent,
Sargent?
S-A-R-G-E-N-T.
He's Lieutenant Sargent.
Yeah, I got that.
Were you Sergeant before that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So since my counterpart in the fire department's not here tonight, he said we could have all his funding as well, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when he's not here, it'll teach him.
But what I will do is, so we have this worksheet here, which is just an overview of everything. But I'm gonna skip over that so we can get into the more of the details. So if you go to the spreadsheet that has it look like this.
Did I don't think I got one.
I don't think I have that either.
I don't have it.
In the email, there was a series of emails I sent about a week and a half ago,
Yes.
2 weeks ago. There was both the summary sheet and the detail
Okay.
sheet that I scanned. There was like 2 or 3 emails.
Okay.
Must have got lost in the attachments or something.
There was a lot of attachments.
That was probably, I probably just didn't
Yeah, there
print
were
every
a lot.
attachment, so, yeah. But that would be, I like those worksheets better, they're very helpful.
Yeah, it's a little easier.
But anyway, just while we're talking, this sheet, for your section, that's all what's under police equipment, isn't it? Because that number 488,
You're
Or what-
looking at the capital?
yes, and the capital one, at 488.5, seems to be the same number that is under 53,400 police equipment.
So
Yeah.
several of these
That
items, that
number-
is not,
Is that number?
It is, why isn't this matching up? Hold on. It's actually this.
Right,
So it's
right,
below.
right, that's what I mean. That
Yes, that's
number
the
is
total.
all this, and that is
Yes.
here where it says
You have-
police equipment, right?
Correct.
That's just, okay.
Is that part of the bigger budget? Is that what you-
Yes, yeah, right there on,
Yeah, in the operating budget, there's a line for like large equipment.
Police equipment, yeah, I know. and fire it says large equipment, on police it says police equipment, but
Yeah,
I.
that's one of the things Amber's gonna fix.
Okay, so everyone's the same,
Right, yeah.
right, okay.
One of the things with the new software.
So,
And everybody using the same accounts.
while Amber is making copies of that, one thing I will mention is, when our building was built back in 2004, it was actually designed to have a second floor, a finished second floor. That was not done at that time. It was
Thank you.
the number, in
Thank
order
you.
to save money, that was changed. As
Thank
we are growing, we're also running out of room. So one thing that we'll be looking to put in the amended budget going forward in the actual capital budget would be monies in there to finish that second floor. So we have conceptual drawings of what that potentially could look like up there, but we would need to go through the entire building process to it would involve completing the second floor and then doing some modifications to the first floor to make that more usable space. So that's something that we'll be looking at down the road in the amended budget after the first of the year.
Do you have a general number what that might be?
It's approximately 1.4.
About 1.4 million is what the
Okay.
high-level numbers came in at.
Oh, that was based on an estimate about 6 months ago,
Yes.
so I would.
That's close.
add to that.
We'll find out more.
Depends on where building materials are at that time, unfortunately. So we'll go through the spreadsheet here. That first page of the spreadsheet is all the salary line items. And over the years, we've had multiple accounts for different salary line items, all the way to the point where we had individual employees broken out into their own line item. So what I've done, working with Ms. Cav and Ms. Rathburn, is to combine the salaries into two separate accounts, two separate line item accounts. One would be for the sworn officers, and the other would be for our support services, which includes our communications, records, our crossing guards, and our supervisor and support services manager for that side of it. On the sworn side of it, right now, as of November, when we get our next three here hired and working, we'll have 38 sworn officers. We'll be back up. But what I would like to do is look at adding 3 additional officers to next year's budget. With the 25% increase in population over the last decade here in Perrysburg, we have not increased our patrol officers. We've added school resource officers over the years. Chief Pye has added a detective back in approximately 2009, but that's been the increase we've had. If we look at what the FBI national average is for officers per 1,000 residents, it's 2.1. So based on that, we should be somewhere around 52 officers, which I think may be a little high. 41 may still be a little low, but I think that gets us in a lot better position. So
Are we at 38 right now?
38, well, we're at 35 right now, but we, like I said, as in the personnel committee meeting, since I've been chief, we've had 15 people retire. These are all planned retirements because of the COPS grant. There was a lot of officers hired at the same time, so we're going through that attrition. Fortunately, we've been able to hire some lateral officers from other agencies and bring them in, officers who have some experience. So we've been able to keep up with that, but these next 3 here in November will get us back up to full staff. So going forward.
I'm really glad that you're looking at hiring some more officers. I think it's needed, for sure.
Yeah, it is. So if we can get these 3 next year in the budget, then that'll get us back up where I think we're comparable with other agencies similar to us in size.
Is that 1 per shift then? You're thinking you're adding 1 per shift? Is that the idea?
Probably what we do is actually add 2 to the afternoon shift, which is our busier shift, 1 to midnights. Because during the day, during the week, if things go crazy, we have the administrative staff there, we have our detectives there, we have the school officers, so we can draw from them if we need be. But
Right now you have 4 on patrol at a time, right?
that's our minimum. So
You're right.
what I would like to do is once we get these next 3 trained in November, we hire 4 next year, and then up our minimum to either 5 or 6 per shift, depending on the shift.
Will that require more vehicles?
Yes, so that'll be,
Oh, that's coming up.
that's coming in the budget.
All right, go ahead.
So as far as, we've maintained the current number of support staff that we have, but we would add 3 sworn officers to this. So are there any questions on the salary portion of it?
No.
Okay. When we get into the next section, we put money in our budget each year to house county prisoners. The only time we have to pay to house any prisoners in the county jails if we hold them on a municipal charge. So 99.9% of the time, we're going to book them in under an ORC section, which then puts the cost back on the county to pay for that stay. But we do put that in there just to have that as a backup there. Safety Town, we set $18,000 in there to pay for our Safety Town employees during the summer. We contract that out, so they're not actually city employees, but we go through a temp agency to get them. But we still have our say in that, and usually it's employees from the school that we have for that. Our police training, kind of divide that up a little bit, $40,000 just for the general training for all our employees across the board. I have $20,000 in there for leadership development training. I put together a succession plan shortly after I was put in this position, and so I want to make sure that we're training our officers or sergeants or lieutenants to move forward when I'm long and gone. So we have someone who can take over easily. So we have that in there. And then we also take part in Owens has a training consortium. We pay about $1,000 a year, and that gives us unlimited seats in the training that they bring in. So it's a very cost-effective way to get some local training. So we've been doing that.
Well, why was the training 99 this year?
So we move some things around as we go through the budget. If you look at the overall sheet, you're going to notice there's some big percentage increases. Mm-hmm. And so when Ms. Cabot, Ms. Rathburn and I had met, we moved some different things. So our Lexapol subscription that we pay for our policies and things like that, there is a training component to it, and so we were taking out of that training fund, but we felt it would be better put into a new fund called Comtech.
Comtech, yeah, we're learning that on every department.
So that one will be a lot larger, and some of these other ones will be smaller, so that's why training is down there. The property insurance, I just get that from Ms. Rathburn every year as to what we need to have for that in the budget. Our office equipment maintenance, we have maintenance on copy machines and different other things in the office, so we put that in there each year. This repairs and maintenance, the next account is repairs and maintenance for different equipment that we have. So our fingerprint system, our digital radio and phone recording equipment, our agreement with Motorola to service our radios, all our portable radios, all our equipment, things like that. All that comes out of that budget there. And the next one is repairs and maintenance for building. So these are things specific to the building. We have our building cleaning that we do every year, the rug maintenance, just different things like that. Any minor repairs that may come up. The bigger stuff comes out of the Department of Public Service budget, but the rest of it will come out of ours.
That jumped up quite a bit. Is that just because you moved something around there too, or?
I would have to...
Almost, well, doubled. Am I right?
Repairs and building.
Which line was that, Chief?
The 51636, repairs and maintenance.
Am I looking at I'm sorry, I was looking at 630.
Okay. Yeah, 630, that one did jump up because, for example, the service agreement with Motorola for our radios, we had a different line item for radios in there, but after talking with Ms. Rathburn, we're trying to get things in line where they should be with the appropriate account. So that was one of those things that was a $35,000.
That makes sense.
Put in there.
I'm
so,
getting used to that.
Right.
Keep hearing it every committee.
Yeah, let's see, the Comtech services. So this is the one where there's a lot of things that go into that one. Our portion of the phone system, our cell phones, our modems in the vehicles, the monthly stuff on that. A big one is the Lexapol policy and training costs, which is $13,000 annually that goes in there. And there's a lot of other smaller things, some of the online investigative resources that we use. The mobility licenses are for the cars so we can connect to the different resources that we use. The code red is in there, icp.net, which is another resource that we use. A lot of these things are bigger resources that we use. Some of the big ones, the Leeds NOR service, we pay that every year so we can have access to the law enforcement database. Our web check service fees, this is actually an account that the state bills us. We actually, when people come in for a web check, they pay us for it. That gets deposited into a revenue account, but we put the money in here up front, and so this goes to pay the state. And then our Phoenix licensing is our CAD and records management system, and so that's what the yearly cost of that is. So that communication services goes up quite a bit there. And then the radio purchase and maintenance and the leads, that stuff is all placed in that Comtech account. So we have one account to draw that from and not everything broken out. So those are all the contractual services that are in there. Anybody have any questions on any of the contractual stuff we just went over?
It's pretty straightforward.
Looks like there's a lot of consolidation in some of these line items. So,
Trying to,
which makes it a little bit harder to understand. But
right. But at least we can break it down on the spreadsheet.
Yes,
so
right.
We can still have it like that. Next up, the supplies account. So the firearms, the ammunition, the less lethal munitions that we use, things like that, firearms training supply, that was stuff that had come out of the training account before, but they're supplies. I mean, we use them up and we're done with them. So those are in that account now. Our expenses for our educational safety programs, DARE, Safety Town come out of that. We always have to buy extra stuff for fireworks every year. Our evidence processing, headsets for dispatch, so they can, multitask, be on the phone, radio at the same time. Narcan, we use that quite a bit. Not surprisingly. I think they had someone the other night. Officers did a great job, actually saved this woman's life. She was overdosing, gave her 4 doses of Narcan to bring her back, so she was on the verge of death, and they saved her. So, it's a valuable tool. And then supplies for, just disinfecting, sanitizing. We've gone a lot farther since the COVID pandemic, and so we're making sure we're doing our cars, making sure we're doing our office equipment, so that is in there to make sure we have those supplies.
Is that all stockpiled?
We have some stuff, so.
Is that the pallets in the MRE building that I see pictures of?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we're good. The office supplies we use every year, so stationary office supplies, that could be the ink cartridges, pens, paper, all that type of stuff comes out of that one. We do put $500 in there for prisoners. We don't typically house a prisoner, but if we would have someone that's going to be there for a few hours because of a booking process or being arrested on a serious crime, we need to feed them. We want them to be able to have some money to do that if that is the case. And then other expenses. So the background investigation, stuff for our pre-hires. So when we hire a police officer, they go through a medical exam, they go through a psychological exam. So that type of stuff comes out of there. Advertisement for recruiting, Citizens Police Academy. Hoping we have that back in the picture next year. Hopefully we're past a lot of this stuff. Our professional memberships, and then there's other things that come up throughout the year that we don't anticipate. We have the money set aside for that in there. The next one is the dog warden animal expenses. Even though we don't have a ACO at this time, there still are some expenses. If we, need to, if we find a cat that's it's actual household pet, not a feral cat, household pet, we can't, find the owner of it, something like that. Then we contract with Midway Animal Hospital. They give us a good deal to house it down there if need be. something come up where we got an animal that's injured, we need to get it somewhere right away. If we can't find the owner, we possibly might have to pay for some of the expense, so stuff like that will come out of there. So we do have that money set aside for some of these things that we need with that.
As long as, can I just stop you a minute on the animal
Yeah.
control officer, because I know you know that there's a lot of chatter about that right now. You want to publicly address that and tell us?
Sure.
I know you had to know this was coming up because I'm sure hearing a lot about it.
Right, and I knew, when I looked at this, I put together some numbers, I looked at it, and I think what the chatter is, at least the way I understand it is not necessarily animal control as far as what our ordinance says animal control is. It's nuisance wildlife control. So if you look at our city ordinance, and specifically 618.14, it talks about the animal control officer, and that the main function of the animal control officer is to supplement within the city limits the duties of the county dog warden in enforcing the provisions of ORC Chapter 955 and then the provisions of this chapter. So the provisions of this chapter deal with dogs, household pets, and then there's a section on exotic animals that was added several years ago. So it does not anywhere address nuisance wildlife. I think there's also a misconception out there that there's some, raccoon sanctuary that these animals go to. They don't go to the raccoon sanctuary. Per the Ohio Administrative Code, if an animal is trapped on the property, there's two options. One, release the animal where it's trapped on that same property, which really doesn't do the homeowner any good, or you euthanize the animal. And so when I started here, we did a lot of that. We euthanized raccoons, skunks, possums, whatever was caught. And I still remember, I was probably here for about 18 months, and it was a Sunday, and police officers actually went out and picked up the traps, put them in the back of our cruisers, muddy, dirty, stinky, smelly, took them down to Rockmore Range, pulled them out of the trap and shot them. And there was one Sunday where Dave Schmaltz and I went and we collected 9 raccoons that day. 8 of them were shot. The 9th one, there was 2 in one cage. It saw what happened to his buddy. He got out of the cage, ran up my arm, across my shoulder, and down. And at that point, that was my first experience is what are we doing here? So the whole idea of the animal control officer is not nuisance wildlife trapping. It is for dogs, cats, things like the household pets. When Jeff was here, I looked at the call volume and looked over a 30-month period. And majority of our calls are dog-related calls. And during that time, officers actually handled 70% of the dog-related calls because they came in after Jeff's normal working hours, so after 4 o'clock at night or on the weekend. So the officers were still handling those things. So now with the dogs, if it's a barking dog complaint, and usually those come in the evenings when people are trying to sleep or early morning, the officer can go out, they can address that call. That was never really something Jeff had to do a whole lot. Loose dogs, we have it worked out with the county dog warden where we can get a dog, and the vast majority of the time, if the dog's wearing a tag or has a microchip in it, we can identify the owner and get it back to the owner, within 20, 30 minutes max. In those cases where we can't get a hold of the owner, we get a hold of the dog warden, and we can get it to the dog warden, or we can bring it back to our place where we have a couple kennels, and we can house the dog there for a night if we have to before we get it to the dog warden.
Chief, with all due respect, isn't this taking a lot of time away from you and your officers? If you would rather have an animal control officer on site, that might take some time, be able to do
Right.
your job a little bit more.
No, and actually, so what I did is I looked at our animal calls through the first 9 months of this year. So the barking dog calls, we've had 31 barking dog calls. Not a whole lot there. Loose dog calls, we've had 105 of those. So we're looking at, you know, less than one every other day, you know, basically every other day for a loose dog call. So those are the majority of our calls. You know, we may get calls about, you know, a dog in the car when it's hot out, you know, they parked it at the store, stuff like that. So dog bite calls, we've always handled the dog bite calls. You know, again, 70%, so we're looking at approximately 187 dog calls or so. So if we do 70% of that, you know, that's not a whole lot of dog calls during normal hours that would justify having an animal control officer. And again, I go back to the animal control officer doing what is, you know, what that was designed to do per the city ordinance. I think what people are looking for, though, again, is that wildlife nuisance control person, which was, you know, never the idea of this position to begin with. It kind of evolved in that position over the years. But, you know, from a liability standpoint, you know, we shouldn't be having city employees going into houses, you know, trying to get bats out, trying to get squirrels out of attic. I think we run the liability there. And just from a, you know, standpoint of, you know, now we have private citizens, you know, having a police employee, you know, digging through their house as well. So there's some different, you know, issues with it there. You know, if people want to look at nuisance control, that's one thing, but nuisance control doesn't fall under the animal.
That isn't what I'm hearing from the public. What I'm hearing is they're more interested in, you know, if their dog's loose or their cat is loose, is somebody able to do that?
And then we still are.
I just think that it would be more advisable to have that position filled or thought to be filled, because that way it would take valuable time that you need for your officers
Right.
to do.
But based on, you know, number of calls and averaging out to maybe one call a day, I can't, in my mind, justify the cost of having a full-time animal control officer doing that.
Remember what the salary was for our
It's
former
about
ACO?
68,000.
68?
Yeah. That was just salary, that didn't include any benefits,
Okay.
anything like that.
And what will these new officers start at?
The new officers, so we've been able to bring officers in under lateral entry and per their collective bargaining agreement. We have the ability to put them in a higher wage rather than the starting wage. So if they come in with 5 years experience, we can put them at the 5-year mark on that. So when I budgeted for these officers, I based it on the 2 steps from the top of the pay scale. So based on where we've hired other officers, what range. So it'd be approximately $35 an hour is what it works out to be.
But if they're fresh out of the academy, it's
Yeah, if it's fresh out of the academy, it'd be lower.
yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, that answers my question if you want to. Sorry, I interrupted
No,
your flow there,
no
okay.
The fuel cost is the same as what we had this year. With the hybrid vehicles, we are seeing a fuel savings on those. With the Tahoes, we're getting about 12 miles to the gallon. With these hybrid vehicles, we're getting up 20, 21 miles a gallon. So definitely see the fuel savings there. I did keep it the same cost though, because fuel prices have been rising. So that still should be sufficient. And then the $40,000 that we have set aside for vehicle maintenance, we have that. It's been the same for a number of years now. So we have with the inside mechanics, we're able to stay good on that. So that materials and supplies section then would come out of 2075. So, are there any other questions on that? Those sections.
I might have one. That was, yeah, that included the crossing guards, right?
Yes.
Yes. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Got to find my crossing guard file. So, I know you had done a little research, Mr. Weber, with the rates. So, our current rate is $12.65 an hour, and what I budgeted next year is $1 increase in that. So that would bring it up to $13.65 an hour. You know, yes, we've neglected this over years. You know, I know what they're going through. It's kind of like the senior staff. You know, we try to fix some things, but we're not going to be able to fix it all overnight. But we are starting with January. Then that would increase to $13.65 an hour. Rossford, I know they have like a $15 an hour, $19 an hour. Rossford is actually paid for by the schools. They're not city employees.
Oh,
So they're a little different over there. Maumee, you noted that they started at $10 an hour. I talked to Chief Sprout today. He said that's actually $12 an hour they start. And then they get a 50-cent increase each year that they're there. So they all start at that $12 and then go on from there. I checked with the chief in Sylvania. Sylvania has no crossing guards. Surprisingly, they have, you know, a similar community as us and similar number of schools, but they've never had crossing guards. White House does have crossing guards. They pay $12.72 an hour, and then they will give them a cost of living increase next year. And I'm not sure if that's based on consumer price index or a negotiated rate that the other city employees get. And then Bowling Green also employs, the city employs crossing guards, and they pay $13.07.
okay, yeah, that 13 will put us, but can we look at getting annual increases?
Yeah, and that's what, and that comes back on me, and that's just something I need to build in. Talked to Ms. Cabot earlier, and maybe it's something we look at, you know, what similar increase to what the bargaining unit members are getting for that year. Maybe we can look at putting that in there.
Because it seems to me, yeah, I see a lot of, I go by some crossings where there's a police officer there. That means you are shorthanded. So
We are.
are you having trouble filling these positions? Could it be because of the wages that you're having trouble?
Wages could be part of it. I think another part, we've talked to some people, reached out directly, and they're like, yeah, that kind of ruins my day. You know, an hour in the morning, and then I got to hang out, you know,
Sure.
I really can't plan a lot of stuff, then come back an hour in the afternoon. So I can see where the schedule could be part of that. We had advertised recently for some crossing guards. I'd also let the schools know about it to see if there's parents that were interested, and we got no takers on it. So,
I mean, because, you know, fast food
you're right.
employees are getting minimum 15 now.
And they're still having a hard time finding.
And they're still having a hard time. So I really think you're going to continue to have a hard time filling those. If
Right.
we can't make it a little more.
No, and what we do is, you know,
Proactive.
when we do have an officer that's available, we'll put an officer out there, but, you know, again, it depends on the call volume, and then, you know, we want to make sure that the busier crossings are covered first, and then the ones that, you know, aren't as many people, you know, maybe the last ones that they get covered in those cases.
How many crossings are there?
There's 8 that we have.
And how are those determined? Warranted or?
So they've changed over the years. We try to do a count in the fall, the first couple months of the school year, then a count in the spring, and we look at how many of those are. There used to be one on Fort Major Road at Sutton Place where there was one person crossing there. And so, you know, it's kind of hard to justify that all the time. So the schools still have their safety patrols where they have the kids that might do the smaller side streets, you know, under adult supervision. But, you know, some of our bigger ones is in front of St. Rose, so they're front Elm Street. That's a fairly busy one. Echo Junction Road and Hunter's Run is another bigger one down by Fort Meigs. So then we have, you know, a couple that are along state routes, 199, US 20. So those are some of the bigger ones.
The time frame, for example, at Hunter's Run and Echo Junction. How long are they there? Like 25 minutes? What's the window?
We have them there for an hour, because that way we can just, you know, for
It's an
simple,
easy
way, you get an hour in the morning, hour afternoon. But yeah, when we have an officer out there, you know, they might be taken out of service for about 20 minutes because they kind of have a better idea of,
Sure.
you know, what that time frame is. So they'll get out there for that time, get them crossed, and then go back to their regular duties.
So when you're short, do you move them So that,
We can, we have some that are very set, on their crossings, and, you know, they don't want to move. But, you know, usually Amanda's pretty nice and can talk them into it if need be. But, you know, we'll put officers where we can then, you know, if it's a really busy one, we're gonna make sure we got someone there.
So it's possible we can look into maybe in 23, maybe 2023, looking at annual increases, small annual?
Yeah, and like I said, you know, what I can do is,
At least
you know,
that's equivalent to the neighboring communities?
right, you know, we can look at, you know, the dollar would be a pretty good jump. It's gonna put them above
Yeah.
UG, above White House, above Maumie's starting rate.
That seems great to start. yeah.
So we can get that, and we can look at, you know, if it's a 2% increase that the CBA members are getting, or maybe a 3%, we can look at that.
I just question, because it's an hour, whether $2 a day is going to change anybody's mood. So, I mean, I know it's a good gesture, but when you're dealing with an hour in the morning, you're either going to do it or you're not.
Right.
For $13, $14 or whatever. So it's just finding people that want to spend an hour.
And if the schools would like to actually pay for that, we could probably perhaps find people.
Yeah, the schools, okay.
Because the pledge to an automatic increase, I don't know that I could advocate that to the mayor, because there's no such thing as an automatic increase to the non-bargaining employees.
And I guess my point is, I'm not sure it will matter. Because if you'll do something for $14 for 1 hour, then.
And I think where, you know, this dollar increase, though, does go a long way with our current employees who have not gotten that increase in a number of years, you know, because they were overlooked. So this, you know, will do that. But I agree with Mr. Matthews, and you know, it may not, if you know, these restaurants that are paying $15, $16 an hour have a hard time finding people.
For a half a day.
Right.
Let alone a 1 hour. So that's why it's a.
Yeah. But I think, you know, for current employees that are doing this job, then I think that's, you know, it's justified for them. Any other questions on the crossing guards?
No, that's all I have.
All right. The next section is kind of more the capital section. So we have another special assessment real estate tax. Again, I asked Ms. Rathburn what to put in there. She tells me, and I put it in there. But we do have different chairs. We have dispatch chairs. We have chairs in our squad room. These are chairs that are used 24 hours a day. So we do have to replace so many of them each year just to keep up on that. And then if there's any other furniture, fixtures, things that come up throughout the year that we need, you know, we have the money in there for that. So the EDP purchases, so I put money in there for in-car computer and modem replacements. We've been going through and replacing, as we get new cars, putting new computers in those new cars as well, because some of the computers we have are several years old, so getting a little slow, have some issues with them, so we put that in there. And there may be other purchases that come up, printers that need replaced, monitors that need replaced, so that's why we put that additional in there. And then the big items, so with the additional officers coming on, we're going to need some additional vehicles in our fleet, so we're not running these cars 24 hours a day. So I am requesting 4 vehicles this year that would, what we'd be looking to doing is replacing 3 of our current vehicles that are older and adding an additional car to the fleet. And that would include outfitting for the vehicles, similar to what we've done in the past. If Bowman Ford would give us the same deal they've given us, where they come in on our state bid, then we can get it from them with it outfitted, so that's worked out well. We do need to replace some of our AEDs. I know the fire department's recently purchased some new heart monitors, so I've talked with them about getting AEDs that would easily connect to those heart monitors, so if we have to use an AED on someone, there'd be easy transition there, so ours are coming out. Another big item in there is new tasers. So we started tasers several years ago. We have some older tasers and some that are, you know, in need of repair, replacement. One thing that I don't like about our current tasers are they're black. They look similar to a gun. And not too long ago, there was a incident in Atlanta where, you know, they got a hold of an officer's taser. When it pops, it still sounds like a gun. So there's, you know, some question there sometimes. I do want to upgrade to the newer tasers. It's the Taser 7. They're yellow tasers. The software that's with them, we can have the officers come in, they can download the data from them every day, so we know, you know, if they're spark testing the taser like they're supposed to each day, if they, you know, if there was a discharge, and, you know, whether we didn't know about it, things like that. So there's some accountability and tracking software that we can utilize with these new tasers. These tasers would come with a 5-year warranty. So they'd be warranted for 5 years. So if we have any issues during that time, we'd be covered. Every officer would be assigned a taser, which is actually the best practice. That way they're responsible for that one taser. We're not sharing tasers among officers. So that way we know that they're checking them, so there's some accountability there. So that's going to be a bigger item to purchase in there. With the additional vehicle, we're going to need to add in-car camera system to that because we don't have any extras of those. So the cars we're replacing, we can swap those out, but we need to purchase an additional one. And then along with the computers, we're also replacing the radar units. A lot of our radar units are quite old. We do get them calibrated every year, but some of them we've had issues with, so we'd be replacing 4 for these 4 new cars as well. We have money in there for bicycle upgrades. We've increased our bike patrol over the last couple of years, so if you're out trick-or-treating or handing out candy, we'll probably see the officers out on bikes this weekend. But we do use those, you know, as soon as it starts getting warm out, so we need to update some of that stuff. With the new additional officers in the budget, there's also we need to buy some additional firearms so we can outfit our officers. Also a couple additional firearms for the extra vehicle that we'll have. So I did put money in there for that as well. Our ballistic vest, our bulletproof vest, those have a 5-year shelf life, 5-year warranty on them. So we got a system where, you know, every year there's a group of officers that are getting replaced, or if we have new officers come on, we purchase that to make sure they have that, because we do have a mandatory wear policy for the officers in the field. Ballistic helmets, we also provide helmets for the guys, so you know, if they get into a situation, they have those helmets for protection as well. Radios, we're going to have to buy some additional radios as well for officers. Radios for the extra radios for the new vehicle that we have there. So we do need to buy some of that. And then also I'd like to add an additional drone. We started a drone program this last year, so we have a drone on hand. Currently we have 3 licensed pilots for it. Pretty soon we'll have 3 additional. So that way if we have someone missing, we can put that drone up in the air. It does have FLIR capabilities to look for people at night for heat signatures. So I'd like to get an additional drone, so we have that, so we have a couple, so if one goes down, we have an additional one, or if we're searching 2 different areas, we have that as well. So, but that can be utilized by us, and then, you know, if the fire department needs it for some reason, we can bring it out and put it up for them as well and help them out. So that would be, that covers the capital expenditures in there. Any questions on any of that stuff?
So, and of course, I'm reading off 2 different sheets to just want to make sure I understand. So are there actually 44 tasers that you're buying? Is that the correct number?
Yes. So there'd be about 44. So we would have enough for every sworn officer, plus we'd have then three spares in case someone goes down, then we have a spare that they can use.
And is there any resale value to the old ones?
It's very small. Taser said they would, you know, it works out to be about $50. I think we have about 10 of them. So potentially there would be some resale value to those, back to Taser.
And so, and going back to the vehicles, this blue one is showing 4 replacements. Is there 3 replacements plus an ad?
So so we're looking at 4 total to buy. So 3 of those would replace current vehicles that we have, and then the 4th one would be additional
an add-on.
because we're having additional officers come on board.
And then our total number of patrol.
That would bring us up to 15 marked vehicles.
Thank you.
Then the next stuff is just based on, so the workers' comp, the retirement, insurance, Medicare, unemployment is based on payroll numbers, so those are percentages based on that. Uniforms, so officers, so support staff and officers, per their collective bargaining agreement, have a uniform allowance, so we've set the money in there every year, and then we track it internally. So when officers need new uniforms or new boots or new gear, and that comes out of their uniform account. So we have that in there, and then also we take stuff out if we need to, buy additional badges because we're adding officers, or replenish our supply patches. That type of stuff comes out of there as well. So, and then the last thing would be the special funds. And so those special funds are based on what's in the accounts. So we just put general numbers in there, and so we may be getting more money down the road, when drug funds come in, things like that. So that's nothing that comes out of the general fund. That's just the special funds that are from forfeitures and seizures.
Still do auctions and
So the auction, yes, and actually that was just changed, and Amber can speak to that, but.
We're going to start using a new company, Gov Deals is what it's called. They get a lot of local entities use it. I forget how many statewide, but it's a crazy number. So there's a lot of exposure. I hope to get higher bids this way. We're going to have a link right on our website. Since Finance Committee did approve those 2 surplus vehicles, those are going to be our first 2, and then we have some furniture to sell, but hopefully better prices for these and more exposure to the public. So check out Gov Deals if you want.
how about unclaimed items, things
Yeah,
that,
so stuff that is unclaimed, and then once we go through the process of having the court forfeit it over to us, then, so the bikes, it's things like that. If we recover stolen property that we can't identify the owner and it gets turned over to us, and all that type of stuff. So Amanda will work with Amber to put that stuff on the auction site then.
can I ask one question back on the personnel side?
You may.
We had to add an officer for our new security system here. Where did you find that? I mean, was that already planned from last year that?
We've been utilizing staff that are existing staff.
Just whenever they're,
Right.
so maybe one of the things are slow that someone comes in here, or how's that work?
Yeah,
'Cause
we make
how many
sure-
hours?
There's always someone there from just before 8 in the morning until at least 4:30, and then there's somebody there on meeting nights. And the chief is rotating existing personnel on shift in and out of that slot.
Is that overtime or?
It depends. Usually if we have a minimum of 5 here, then we can do that. But we also, during the summer months, we've utilized the school officers when they're not in the schools to fill in there. Our DARE officer, he's not in DARE every single week, every day of the week. He teaches a couple days a week at HPI so that he can come and fill into that spot. And then we have their detectives as well. So if we're running short, we can do that.
So it's a big juggling act for you, isn't it?
It is, but I think, at the end of the day.
But y'all do just one, usually just try to just have one here?
Just one. I think when we've had, 100 people show up for a meeting, we had.
I've seen a couple, no,
Come out
time or
just to-
two,
just to
yeah.
help.
I have one question. I know we've brought this up before. Is there any way that somebody could be, I call it a sergeant at arms, so to speak, that would be at the council meetings, maybe not in uniform, but could be there just in case we would need them?
That's something we could talk about, we can look at. We do monitor the meetings. Our dispatch has that live, and actually our officers who are stationed out there, they can pull up video to monitor meetings as well. So they have that there as well. So we do have an idea of what's going on inside the meeting at that time.
Thank you.
Along the lines of personnel, with the kind of turnover we've experienced recently, what are you anticipating in the next year or two?
So that's actually something that Ms. Kevin and I have sat down, we talked about, and so I have one person that's eligible to retire in the next year. After this last 23, there's one person that's eligible, or 22, there's one person eligible. In 23, I'm eligible.
Okay.
Excuse me, think so, but the answer is no.
So myself, Lieutenant Cartwright are both eligible. Is that likely to happen? Probably not. But then we have a couple other people that are. So we've kind of looked ahead over the next 5 years, and there's a couple people each year that are eligible to retire.
Nothing like we've seen.
Nothing like we've seen. And what happened is 20-some years ago, when the federal government was handing out the cops grant money, like it was free candy at Halloween.
The drop.
They hired 6 people at a time. And so they brought in a lot of people, and those people just were able to retire. And there's people that stayed a little longer, but then they just say, you know what, I'm done. So now we're in a pretty good position, and the last 15 that we brought in have 7 years or less time in law enforcement. So it's going to be a number of years before they go. So we should be in pretty good shape going forward now.
So last question, what is it that you would ask for that wasn't provided for in the budget?
Everything that is in here is what we need to go forward. Like I mentioned earlier, the expanding our upstairs and making our downstairs more usable space. That's something that we can look at in the amended budget, but that's going to be a big ticket item. As we grow, we need to expand our space over there to make room for people.
I know when it was originally built, I had no idea that the basement wasn't finished, nor the second floor. It was just a one-story construction.
Right. So there's some things cut back at the time, but we, since then the basement is completely, the range has been put in. It was put in several years ago, so that's all usable. But now upstairs is just a shell at this point, and we need to, make that usable space.
Anything else?
I do have one question. You mentioned about utilizing the downstairs more. What do you foresee doing with that?
So right now, in general, the upstairs half of it would be administrative side, so it would be myself, the 2 lieutenants, our support services supervisor and manager would be up on one side. The other side of it would be our detectives. So downstairs, that would leave my office space blank. It would leave the detective bureau blank. It would leave the lieutenant's office blank. So what we would do is take our control room, our roll call room, expand it into the detectives area and the lieutenant's area to open that up, because right now we can really only have room for 7 computers in that room. So if we had 8 people working, they all can't be in at the same time. So we need to expand the workspace for the patrol officers. The area where I am now, we can utilize that for our records area to get them out of that dispatch area so they can focus on their responsibilities there. And part of the holding facility that we use, we have 4 cells there. We do not use the cells. We don't hold people any longer than we have to. We have a couple of interview rooms that are locked that we could utilize in there as cells if we had to. So there'd be the idea of reconfiguring some of that holding area for storage, because we're going to lose a lot of storage upstairs when we finish that area. So there'd be some room for storage, record storage, things like that. we could possibly redo in that downstairs area.
Anything else?
Nothing on the budget. I don't have anything else on the budget.
All right.
You good? Thank you.
And Chief Ruiz will be here at the next committee meeting to talk about his budget, but I'm certainly able to answer probably most questions regarding the
Okay.
budget.
Chief, like I said, I didn't have any budget questions, but I do have a couple other questions, non-budget.
Okay.
How are we doing on, now that the Starbucks has been open a while, can you give us a report of how many accidents or anything that's happened over there in that intersection?
I would have to pull up the crashes to see exactly, how many have been since that has opened. I've been there through different times throughout the day, and, they seem they're busy, but I haven't seen, necessarily people, backed out all the way onto Echo Junction. I stopped at the BP the other day to get something to drink, and I pulled in, pulled out, and I was able to, get into the turn lane to go on 25, no problem. I had have officers a couple times see people, so you have the turn lane from eastbound Echo Junction onto northbound 25, this would be a left turn there. There are people that are heading westbound that get into that turn lane trying to turn into Starbucks, and we've had officers, stop them to warn them, can't do that. But nothing, no major accidents, anything like that. But I could definitely, look at the numbers to see if there's been any type of dramatic increase. But
I was curious because I go by there quite a bit and I have not seen a lineup out in the street yet.
Yes, I have not witnessed it back.
Like it used to be.
no.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so I think they have a pretty good landing space for people to, stage before they go into the line there.
I've not even seen it come out behind that BP building. I mean, they must have very fast baristas in there.
And I drive past there 3 or 4 times a day, and I agree. Where my intrigue is, though, is on Knuckle Junction Road. People wanting to turn left,
Right.
going southbound into BP. That's just an interesting little dilemma. So it's not so much behind Starbucks, because they have that curved around pretty significantly.
Right. And right now, the people that are probably trying to turn left into there are the same people that are trying to turn left into BP. I mean, there's always been people trying to turn into there, whether a Starbucks was there or not.
It's almost an advantage because it's farther away from 25, or from where it used to be.
It did help because people were coming around the corner, northbound, coming around the corner, and that when the curb cut was closer to 25, it didn't have all that much reaction time. Now they have a little bit more time to see what's
Well,
up there.
there's no doubt that moving of the curb cut helped. But yeah, but there's also no doubt that coffee is more of an attraction than gasoline. So.
But really, I don't think we're seeing the problem with going into the Churchill's Plaza.
We have
That, where they would both trying to turn left. Okay, that's what I was
That to me
curious.
is the same problem that has always been there.
Okay,
If you're trying to turn left out of Churchill, on Apple Junction, you're still crossing multiple lanes of traffic.
great. My other question, I might be my last one, and it might be more for Bridget, but with the school zone, I was talking about at Louisiana and 199. Would you be able to give me an update?
Yeah, so paperwork has been turned into the central office of ODOT, and we have not had a response back yet. So we're expecting something any day.
Okay,
And then once that happens, we will have to work with the Public Service Department, and in particular the electrician, to, assuming they grant it. They asked us to fill out the paperwork, so I'm assuming that's the case. Then we'll have to go through the process of selecting school zone signals, getting them on order, getting them in, wiring them up. There should be power right in the area, so that shouldn't be that big of an issue. The biggest issue will probably be actually obtaining the flashers.
wonderful. Might hopefully keep fingers crossed, maybe for next school year.
Yeah, like the lead time on a traffic signal, that's about 6 months out.
Can't
so-
imagine, yeah.
At least it was 2 months ago. I don't know what it is today.
Sure.
But in terms of the fire division, that budget, I think you also have before you from Amber, it may look like their salaries are taking a great leap, but you may recall that you passed a collective bargaining agreement that include not only an annual increase for 2021, 2022, and 2023, but it included that separation between the pay grades for a firefighter and a lieutenant and a captain. Those are greater separations than were in their past contracts. So that is factored in, as well as there was some step compression going from 11 steps to 8 steps in their pay scale. So all those are factored in, and Chief Ruiz came up with a new salary line item of about $2.5 million, which is about a 12.86% increase. You'll still see that there's a category for special firefighters, which are the part-paid firefighters instead of the part-time. That's a different category. They still have clerical support listed separately, and that is their administrative assistant. And they still have their OT separated, as well as their part-time firefighters. We had the same conversation with Chief Ruiz as we have with Chief Jones. And Chief Ruiz, at least at this point in time, is still trying to track some of those costs separately. And so he asked if he could have like another go-around with the current format for budget. But he will get rolled into, with the new software, he'll get rolled into that system. But again, that system is going to be so much easier to slice and dice and grab information out of, that it'll suit his purposes and our purposes in the future. But really going along, there's just the contract with the ambulance billing. And you may recall that started in earnest about a year and a half ago, where we are no longer doing the billing internally. We have farmed that out to a firm to do. That does cost us money, but in return, they are collecting more money, I think, than we were collecting internally, because they have the facilities to keep bird dogging those accounts. Training, a little bit less than last year, and that's because we're doing more training in-house than farming it out and sending people out of town, now that we have the fire station and the fire props at headquarters. They're doing more of that on-site. And one of the big changes for this year is, this coming year is the year that he wants to do a swiftwater rescue. Apparently, we've not done that in several years, and we have a couple new firefighters, so that's something that they'll be doing next year. Insurance is, as the chief has said, Amber gives us that number for liability insurance. The repairs and maintenance, these are the annual maintenance and preventative maintenance on their equipment. That's listed out there, anything from ladder testing to the striker equipment service, and that is actually for the power lift cots. So those are all annual PMs that are maintained on that equipment. They do have a couple new items under building repair and maintenance. One is a specific call-out. That's the outdoor canopy for fire headquarters. You may recall that on the back side of the building, off the kitchen, there's like a little concrete patio. They've determined that without having an overhang, they hardly ever use it because the sun just beats down right there. And so they're asking for I won't say a Mary Grove awning, but some sort of canopy in which to shade that so they can actually utilize it. And then they do have a placeholder for some maintenance, and that maintenance is both for 39 and Station 38. Communication services, this is where, you may recall, this is the new account or the renamed account that's kind of pulling together several items. So these are the subscription services, the I Am Responding, ESO, ProPhoenix, Code Red, and Verizon. So that's anything from cell phones to their CAD system, or utilization into the old CAD system that they used to have, plus their new CAD system, which is ESO. And then the I Am Responding is their pager system. I just realized that the Code Red that's on here is probably incorrect. I'm going to go back and double check that. That may need to come out of their budget. I think we take that out of a different budget.
Exactly what is, all right, Code Red.
Code Red is a
Why would that be on a
subscription
different?
service that we now purchase through Wood County EMA and the Wood County Commissioners.
Oh, okay.
So they hold the master subscription, and we then are just like ancillary. And it's a system, Chief and I were just talking about this today, I think, with Lieutenant Sargent, that it's a system that we don't use very often or as much as we could use. So if you go on our website, you might see sign up for Code Red. Well, if you've done that, you probably get like weather alerts.
Right.
Like there's a tornado, but there's other applications for that that we aren't taking advantage of. So it's something that we need to work on internally, because you can use it anything for a water main break to, we have high-speed chase. And you can actually designate addresses to receive certain pieces of information. So it has a lot of good features. We just have to make ourselves utilize it more than we do. But again, I think that comes out of a different budget out of the general fund. And then under supplies, you'll see a variety of supplies, just basic supplies, and that's anything and everything for the fire department except for EMS supplies. That's a separate category. Stationery is your general office supplies. EMS supplies, that's all the medications, tourniquets, bandages, etc. Fuel, fire prevention education. And the fire prevention education is anything from coloring books to videos that Aaron Harwell uses for Fire Prevention Week for the children. Then under fire equipment, excuse me, you can see the list here. It's additional PPE that's replacing turnout gear. We have CO meters, replacements, Ice Commander water suits, again, replacing equipment as it comes to the end of its useful life. Radio batteries, radio authentication, and that's something that I believe comes about every couple years where we have to do some reprogramming of radios to keep in sync with Lucas County's system, but I can verify that one. Fire hose replacement and nozzles, extrication tool batteries, and then they have additional miscellaneous equipment so that if something does break, they can go ahead and replace it, whether it's a CB unit, air compressors, etc. And vehicle maintenance is pretty self-explanatory. And then there's the special assessment real estate taxes, which again, Amber provides to the departments. They have a placeholder for furniture and fixtures, so this allows them to replace, whether it be chairs in the day room, a bed, a lamp, TV, whatever the case may be. And then under large equipment purchases, they do have a couple new items that we've not seen in a while. The fire marshal is requesting from the fire chief, who is supportive of this, a fire prevention stove prop, and that is a piece of equipment that would go inside the revitalized fire prevention trailer, so that children can learn more about food on stove and hot stoves. So that's something that I've not seen in the 9 years I've been here. They're looking for a replacement vehicle, emergency vehicle, and that will replace either one of the old Crown Vics or their older pickup truck as a chase vehicle. They're looking to add a building air compressor, a wall-mounted air compressor over at Station 38 that is similar to the one that's at Station 39.
Can you just back up one?
Sure.
Right now, they usually, they chase with the big fire truck. You say that they're looking about a smaller
Sometimes
one?
they chase with a pickup truck
Yes.
out of Station 39. It just depends on what's going on. But they're looking at replacing that vehicle to have a vehicle that is more multi-purpose.
Okay, I understand that.
That can be used, whether it be two people have to go out of town on training, they have a vehicle, because right now they don't actually have a pool vehicle. But it
Yeah.
could be used for that. It could be used to pull the boat. It could also be used as a chase vehicle on runs. So it'd be more flexible.
Okay.
That's at least what they're looking at today. And then the last item under there is, we're calling it a garage for storage purposes for their training equipment. As they're acquiring more training props, they're not all fitting up in the mezzanine in Station 39. So they're looking for a small outbuilding in which to store those props that they're acquiring. And this dollar amount, this $60,000, might seem expensive for, I won't call it necessarily a single car garage, but you may recall that we are required, per our planning and zoning code, to conform to pretty much the highest levels of finishes for our buildings. So this would allow this building to match the architecture of the Station 39 in terms of it being perhaps like a brick wainscoting, and then wood siding or cement board siding, shingle roof, a nice looking building.
Do they have any idea in size, square footage on that?
I do not. I know that we worked with Brody Walders in coming up with pricing on that. But obviously it has to meet all the setback requirements that institutional property is permitted. So they have to be aware of having a retention pond, a railroad track, parking lots, so they'll conform to the setbacks. And we're hoping that this pricing even is meaningful at this point, given where lumber and everything else is at. So as we go along with time, we'll refine this, and there may be an additional request during the amended budget process if we need to, if we're finding out that materials haven't come down enough, or that there's not the labor out there to make this happen at this price. Then the next several items are the roll-ups, as Chief Jones mentioned, workers' comp, the retirement system, insurance, uniforms, Medicare. What I will say is the one item that if you ask the question of Chief Ruiz, that is not in here, which is, I won't say similar to Chief Jones, but Amber and I, in making this budget balance on the initial go-round, and I think I put this in one of the emails to the council when I was sending out the emails with all the budgets attached, and it might have been in the budget letter, is that for the fire division, they're requesting a replacement engine, and that's roughly $900,000. In order to make this budget balance, we had to remove the $1.4 million for Chief Jones's outfitting of the second floor. This fire truck, about $230,000 in a transfer to refuse for a new pack rat or a new single arm, and there's like 2 or 3 other items. We fully believe that when we're able to wrap up 2021, all those items are going to go right into the amended budget. That's our intent, but we had to have the balanced budget out of the box.
Sure.
And we were afraid of overestimating revenue in order to make that happen. But we are fully convinced that that's the 5 items that we took out to make the budget balance, those are going right back in first thing.
So in looking at these 2 different formats, so the replace the fire engine, even though it's blank, is considered part of that amended budget.
Yes.
Whereas the second floor of the police station is not listed as part of the amended budget, so.
It will be, and actually, that is a blank in here also.
If you look.
Oh, there it is. Okay, now I see it.
Actually, yeah, it's that first line, so we fully intend to.
Where's that
Well,
blank?
you go over one line. Right.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Yes, we fully intend to make those the priorities in the amended budget process. And you'll notice there'll be a couple other in here, they're actually shaded on my computer like a light green, although I just realized on this piece of paper, it kind of blends in. So we have the 1.4 for the police station renovations, we have the roughly $900,000 for the fire division. We are deferring the courthouse roof replacement of $225,000. It's actually in this year's budget, but we don't have specifications done yet, so we're kind of, that project's going to be a carryover project anyway, so we're putting those dollars back in during the amended. And I want to say there might be 2 more items. One is definitely a transfer to refuse.
The HVAC?
HVAC replacements, which is on page 2 under general buildings. There was a request by service for about $100,000 to have on hand if an HVAC unit goes down in one of our buildings. I'm understanding that we're not in imminent threat of that happening. So again, we were just deferring that to the amended budget process so we can make this budget balance and get it before council. And that's all we have for fire. Certainly, if there's any questions, and I'll certainly have Chief Ruiz come to the next meeting.
Where is Chief Ruiz? Where is he this evening?
Actually, I do not know. When I asked him if he was going to attend, he actually forgot about this meeting and forgot about the budget. So he didn't have that on his calendar, but he said he could certainly attend the next meeting.
Be great.
Well, you went through it pretty well.
Yes, and of
Reach out
course,
to him if
we
you
can
have any
make,
questions.
we
If
can't.
there's certainly any questions, let me know, and then I can make sure that he is here for the next meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions on the fire budget for the time being?
No?
All right, so golf carts.
Golf carts, I think Kate had handed out a variety of other jurisdictions' golf cart legislation at the last committee meeting.
Not the last committee meeting, but after it, I emailed you all.
Oh,
a
yes.
number of copies of golf cart legislation for you to peruse. So that is where you all are. I'm hoping you perused and wish to discuss with you.
And again, I think the position, and Chief, I don't know if you want to speak on behalf of you, me, Dave, whomever, but internally in our discussions, we are of the mind that we are satisfied with our current codified ordinances that do not permit golf carts. I know that there might be a desire by some members of council to pick and choose areas to allow golf carts. I don't know that we find that will be a manageable process. And again, I don't know how you pick one neighborhood and not another neighborhood. But feel free to chime in on any thoughts or concerns.
The way I look at it is if we start piecemealing things, we allow this subdivision to have one, this one to have one, this one to have one, then we're setting our officers up to have a difficult time enforcing. Because as you know, we can go to one subdivision and then you can drive through and go into another one, and maybe that one doesn't have it, or, maybe the,
And where does that subdivision end and the next one begins?
maybe the historic part of the town doesn't have it, but others do. So I think a couple of things, we're gonna end up, having some people that are upset because we're allowing some people to have it and other people not to have it. But from an enforcement standpoint, it's gonna be difficult to enforce. And then, when people do drive outside those boundaries, then the officers are gonna, have to stop, warn them, potentially take enforcement action if it becomes something that's repeated over and over. And from a safety standpoint, we put these golf carts on these roads, and yes, we do have the ability to limit, we can limit it to the roads that are, 25 miles an hour or less, or however we want to do it. The ORC says it's 35, but we can limit that further. But you look at some of these roads that are 25. Louisiana Avenue through the downtown area is 25. But my fear there is you have golf carts going down there, your vehicle's backing out spots, you're not going to be able to see the golf cart as easily. You have semi-trucks on that road. And some of these other parts in the city too, we do get complaints about speed on some of the roads. So we're working on enforcing the speed limits, but these golf carts can't go any faster than 20. So already we're putting them at a disadvantage on a roadway that's 25. And most people, if they get behind someone who's going under the speed limit, which means the exception for it, they're going to get frustrated. And so I think there could be potential problems there. So just from a safety standpoint, when we have as much traffic going through the city as we do, I think having golf carts on the road is not a good idea. That's just my humble opinion.
I would have to say that I agree with all three of you. I think that it's definitely a safety issue, and makes sense from what you're saying.
Well, I think this was brought before the committee by various people, and I think we just needed to do our due diligence, and I, too, would be concerned about that safety feature. But I appreciate your due diligence, Kate, and Chief Pat, so I'm good.
Absolutely, for all those reasons, I totally agree.
So,
I totally agree. I would not want to be the one pushing and then have some terrible accident with one of these. It's just not worth it. Not at this time.
So I do suggest we keep that information on file that has been accumulated, because if there's a groundswell in the future, then we have a little bit of our homework done.
And we'll full sub-file to go.
Perfect.
I have the one that Chief Pyatt started probably about 8 years ago when it was first done. So.
Well, I'm not sure it's going to go away. I think there will continue to be a segment of our community that will want it, so. Anything else?
let's see. Nope, I have everything checked off I wanted to talk about.
Deborah?
No? Oh, I do have one thing. It's been brought to my attention, of course, I also read it in the newspaper as well, about the parks having a problem with the bathrooms and vandalism.
Yeah, so we have had some vandalism issues. There were 4 juveniles who detectives were able to identify and interviewed them. They admitted to it. So there are charges pending in juvenile court against 4 juveniles for some of the vandalism. We're also, looking at, we've talked internally, Talked with Gary Kleinfeld, our IT manager, and with Wi-Fi in the parks now, that's going to allow us to hopefully put some camera systems in place that we can then monitor. We do have other cameras that we can monitor at the police department. They also record, so we can get some cameras at some of these parks and various locations that we can see what's going on when something does happen. Even if we don't see it live, we can go back and look at it, so that will help. But what we have done in the meantime is putting extra patrol in the parks. I know Mr. Ross has changed the timers on some of the bathroom doors to make sure they're getting closed earlier now that it's getting dark out. And then we're going around our officers, just making sure, the doors are actually locked. If someone could put something in the door to hold it open so they can get back in later. But so we've taken some extra precautions there and looking at other things down the road that can help us as well.
The other issue that's been brought, actually came to our recreation committee meeting as well, was about alcohol in the parks. I know it's not allowed in the parks, but
Right.
how do we stop that?
And that's one of those things where it's, we need to catch them doing that. But, a lot of times it can be hidden. I mean, we see people walk around with the tumbler like that. And people can conceal it that way. Obviously, if it is, out in the open, and we can tell it's a can of beer, it's a bottle of wine, whatever, then we'll take enforcement action on that. But when they hide it in the tumbler, that makes it difficult for us to see those things.
And Chief, just to be clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it's a special event, there can be a permit to have
Yes.
alcohol in a tented area in a park. And so for instance, if it's an art opening, there can be a tented area that is serving alcohol, and that is completely legal in the city of
Right.
Perrysburg.
But that also has to have, that goes through that approval process for the event. And then the way our codified ordinance is that comes down to the safety director permitting it for that. But we go through and we look at that and we determine, if it's on city property, then we may require, officers to be there depending on the event. So we do have a process in place for those types of events.
So I heard the statement, a tented event versus a,
Not just
a,
the event doesn't have to be tented, but
okay,
the alcohol itself doesn't just wander around the park for everybody.
It has to be the fenced-in
It
area.
has
a fenced-in area,
it-
okay.
Yes.
So it could be a pavilion. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah, there have to be clear defined borders for that.
IDs are checked and so forth.
Right.
And typically, we have a typical process that we follow, whether it's somebody wanting to close the street for a parade, wanting to close the street for a Winterfest event, a Rock the Docks event, any event that's on city property. There's a checklist that we go through, and the police division signs off on it, and Chief Jones, the public service director signs off on it, and then the final sign off. And if there's anything that gives me the willies, I'm calling the mayor. And, getting his important feedback. But we do have a process, and for that art sculpture event, they went through the proper process, and then we do say yes, to a whole host of other items that have a checklist that Chief Jones makes sure is happening.
Right. The art sculpture event that was something new at Woodlands Park, but doing these events are nothing new because we've been doing Rock the Docks for years, and that's been on city property. There's been alcohol.
Same with Winterfest.
Winterfest, yeah, all those tended events. Yeah, so, okay.
Anything else?
I got nothing.
All right, we will
Good meeting.
adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somehow requires an additional 10.
Great meeting. Well done.
Yeah. I didn't do anything, but
Wow.